So, in continuing my Tafo tips section, I want to talk about a topic called Friendlies, and basically what you could do with your time to make it more efficient. Let's say you're playing against a player that's roughly your level, or maybe you are playing with a top player and they are significantly better than you, or maybe you're trying to coach somebody and you're trying to make the most out of the time. So first of all, I think we need to establish something, and this is going to be very clear. You don't have to win every friendly. Um, View friendlies as a place to lab, and by lab I mean to experiment with options and to test out different things. Because your objective of winning doesn't really prove much here. You don't gain a prize. You don't gain much other than it strokes your ego a little bit. So throw winning out of the window as your primary objective for friendlies. So I'll start off by taking the top player perspective, or like, let's say you're the better player and you're stuck in this mode of, well, no one around me is good. What do I do? So now that we're throwing winning out of the window, it's very important that you understand what skill sets you already have proven to see that works against your opponent. So, for example, if your opponent's so bad that you can shield grab every aerial, and you've already established that you can four stock them by shield grabbing, then simply just stop shield grabbing and work on other things you could do to punish it. Maybe you can, instead of just holding shield and spamming it against them and winning every time, you can use your movement. You can try to beat it with your own hitbox and try other options to see what you can experiment with, or just forego the opportunity to shield grab. Another example I can give you is, let's say your opponent does a stupid aerial every time, and you dash dance grab him on FD and you kill him every time for it. Well, once you get to a certain point, you've already established, hey, like, you can already beat that option. By repeating that over and over again for an hour, you're not really improving yourself, because it's like me asking you what 2 plus 2 is. The answer you would say is 4. But what if I just kept saying that for an hour? 2 plus 2, 4. 2 plus 2, 4. You really didn't learn anything new from what you played. So as a top player, as you begin to see certain options that are just completely dominating over your opponent, try other options. And importantly, if you're really invested in the practice session, tell your opponent or tell your friend what they can do or what habits you notice, so that they can stop doing it and they can learn and they can give you better practice. And so that's one thing you can do if you are a better player than your opponent. I know it can be really frustrating at times, but if you're in this long term and you don't really have many options, it is very wise to tell your opponent, to tell your friend, tell your opponent, tell your training partner what they're doing wrong and what other things they can do. And this leads me to my next point. Don't just play the game. If you have an extended time where you are playing, let's say at your place, and you have hours to spare, play like 3 matches and then talk with your partner. See what you're doing right and see what's going wrong. And then digress, break it down, so that you're not just mindlessly playing, because sometimes it's hard to see your own habits, and sometimes your opponent could be exploiting you in ways that you've never seen. So your opponent could say, like, well, when you do this, I know that you always run at me, and that's something I take advantage of. So by talking and breaking down games as you play along, you learn a lot quicker, and your opponent's not going to abuse the same habits as well. So usually what I recommend is that you play about 2 to 3 matches, and then you break it down, and then you just talk, and then you say, like, what did I do wrong? Or sometimes you may notice a very troubling situation where you constantly get punished. Establish an agreement, like, just say, can we pause and talk, because I'm really having a hard time with the situation, and just talk out the situation. This is a lot more productive than just mindlessly playing and not really communicating. This is a time where you need to be really productive. And lastly, let's say you are the worst player and you're playing against a really good player. The best thing you can do is find specific scenarios to where you're having a lot of trouble. And sometimes playing like a player that's like 5 levels ahead of you is not necessarily the best thing, because it's not really enjoyable for them, to be honest. And contextually, you're not going to even know what you did wrong to begin with. But let's say you can try to identify something specific. And the worst questions you can ask are like, "Oh, what could I do better?" I know I said that earlier in the video, but be specific. And because a specific answer, specific question nets a specific response that can help you right away. So let's say you are getting corner pressured and you don't know what to do. Or let's say you get caught in a jump and you're on a platform and you get comboed mercilessly. Or you're just stuck in a situation that you see over and over and over again. You know what's going on. You don't know your options fully, and you just keep getting punished. Just pause the game, and when you get to that moment, and say like, "Hey, like, I'm trying to do this, but I don't know exactly how to escape this situation." Or maybe you have a combo and you end it early because of something they did. You can pause it and say like, "Hey, like, how'd you get out of that combo?" Or what could I have done to extend it? What could I have done to create pressure? And that's something you can do a lot if you're playing a person that's significantly better than you. Be proactive in asking questions and creating a dialogue. Top players love talking about the game for the most part, and let them express their knowledge to you. And then usually what I do to cap off a friendly session, let's say I'm playing for an hour and a half and we've done this play 2 matches, break it down, play 2 to 3 matches, break it down. At the very end of the set, like about 20 minutes before I know I'm going to leave, I say, "Hey, let's play a serious set, best of 5, and we mimic it like a tournament set." And then we break it down afterwards and say like, "Okay, like what did we take away from the session?" And then write it down, make sure that you keep track of it, because it's very easy to forget. Like if I were to ask you what your last friendly session was, you probably wouldn't remember much about it, because it just kind of fades into the abyss of our melee knowledge. So make sure that you remember. Maybe you take paper, you take notes of like some of the common takeaways you got from the day. This is something that Mike Hayes and I used to do a lot, and this is part of the reason why Mike Hayes got so good. It was because he was very intentional about asking questions and about the idea of improvement. He lost a lot of games just experimenting with me, experimenting with playing aggressive, experimenting with playing passive, experimenting with different options, and consequently he's getting really good. So hopefully this advice helps a lot. In summary, be proactive in asking questions. If you are the better player, try not to just overexploit the same habit over and over again. Let your opponent know what they're doing wrong, and explore other options to beat that option, and just experiment. You'll get a lot more bang for your buck there. And if you are a worse player, be proactive. Pause the game. Discuss. And remember that every friendly you do, you don't really have to win. There's nothing at stake here. It should be the ultimate place where you learn the most.